Okay, we're gonna get started. Since it's 7:30. Okay. Marcia, am I ready to go with the audio? I'm ready to go. Okay. Welcome to the Hillsborough Township Planning Board business meeting of April 23rd, 2015. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law, 1975, the Sunshine Law. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner?
Here.
Dr. Maruli?
Here.
Mr. Merdinger?
Here.
Mr. Peason?
Here.
Committeeman Delcourt?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Burchett?
Here.
Chairman Dr. Cerisi?
Here. First item of business, disposition of minutes of the April 2nd meeting.
Mr. Chairman, the eligible members of the board are Mr. Burchett, Mr. Merdinger, and Dr. Maruli, and Mr. Peason. So moved.
Second.
Okay. Dr. Maruli?
Yes.
Mr. Merdinger?
Yes.
Mr. Peason?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Burchett?
Yes.
Okay. Next up, Township Committee resolutions. The first is the one called the study area, which is a resolution of the Township of Hillsborough determining that the study area comprised of the properties identified as Block 16305, lots 101 through 105, is an area in need of rehabilitation under the local redevelopment and housing law. So we're called upon, Eric, to endorse this, or just
notice it for purposes of the record.
Okay, so that's one, and also for purpose of the record is Ordinance 2015-04, which is the ordinance that establishes the redevelopment plan for those properties, 16305, lots 101 through 105. Okay? So, that it?
No, Mr. Chairman. As to the second item, there is going to be a need to take an action on behalf of the board. The committee introduced ordinance 2015-04 at its April 14th meeting. It is on for second reading and adoption on May the 12th. It is being returned to the planning board for its endorsement relative to the redevelopment plan.
Okay. Any comment by the board? This has to do with our affordable housing plan, and one of the areas that's involved in that plan has to go through this in order to have the affordable housing done. So do I have a motion to recommend it back to the Township Committee for the public hearing? Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I'll move that.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Dr. Maruli?
Yes.
Mr. Merdinger?
Yes.
Mr. Peason?
Yes.
Committeeman Delcourt?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Burchett?
Yes.
Chairman Dr. Cerisi?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any business from the floor and anything not on the agenda tonight?
Yes.
Not on the agenda tonight, yes.
Yes. Co-parts.
Yes. I recognize you.
Mr. Sopko.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Michael Sopko Jr., 2127 Camplain Road, Hillsborough. Come to speak to you about our friends at Coparts. Since we last discussed at the December meeting, I believe it was, for the entire month of January and February, their gate was open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Their parking lot lights do not shut off until well after 12 o'clock at night, and they now, instead of coming out of their parking lot and making a right toward 206, they are now making a left toward Manville and running over the other side of my lawn. There have been personnel there on Saturdays and Sundays. There are still deliveries on Saturdays and Sundays, late night hours. They open up the gates well before 8 o'clock. I've called the police at 6:45 in the morning. 10 to 7, somebody's there to open the gates. on all the trucks pull in.
Mr. Bernstein, what would be the recourse here?
Well, a couple, if the board will indulge me for a moment.
Absolutely,
Mr. Sopko,
yeah, I
have
mean-
you contacted the township at all regarding this,
Not
other
yet.
than the police department?
Not just the police.
All right. I would ask you to please call the township administrator's office tomorrow and advise him of this so that we can deal with it accordingly.
Okay?
I'm going to ask if the board has a problem in asking Ms. Krasinski to provide me with a copy of the transcript for this evening relative to this issue. For the board's edification and the audience, the resolution is still being discussed amongst the attorneys.
Okay.
Mr. Liebling is in possession of it. I will be more than happy to tell him that his client is not only in violation of what was agreed to, but has not been formalized. They're in violation of what they should have been doing.
Yes, it was my understanding that they would not do anything until this was approved.
That's correct. Also, I'm going to give you my card. I'm going to ask you to contact me periodically. We'll let you know when the resolution is going to come up.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
We appreciate you coming in.
No, yeah, really, thanks for
we
coming in.
will-
Sopko,
telling us.
I would, for the purpose of the record, tell you that not only should, and I'm not suggesting this, is you should let the administrator know so that we can deal with it rather than having it come to a planning board meeting. If you simply call him, we'll take care
Yeah,
of it.
so really the process from here is, and I will let the administrator know tomorrow as well, but you're certainly welcome to reach out to him. I would encourage you to do that. But really, we need to have zoning officer get out there and
Yeah, the
evaluate.
board, while we are the body that hears and approves,
Not the enforcement arm.
we're not the enforcement arm. We have no enforcement power, but the township officials do, zoning officer and perhaps police as well. So they're the ones you gotta definitely to go and do some enforcement would be them.
Thank you.
I mean, we're happy to hear it though, simply because we haven't done the resolution yet, so there is one more
Squeeze point.
act to, for us to do, and it's good to hear this ahead of time. But, thank you.
Just want to keep everybody informed of what is or is not happening.
Mr. Sopko, do you have any pictures, et cetera? I'm not saying you have them with you, but
I have at home, yes.
would you also forward those on to Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I will.
Thanks.
Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
Okay. Consideration of ordinances. The main item of business tonight is a draft ordinance. I'm not going to read the whole thing.
You want me to?
Yeah, I'll let you read the whole thing while I, sort of take a few breaths for the next part.
An ordinance amending Chapter 188, Land Use and Development, Article 5, Design Districts and Standards of the Code of the Township of Hillsborough, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, to create the GC Gateway C Zone District and to change the zone designation for several properties in the transit-ready development / East Amwell Gateway area, Block 200.01, Lot 2 front portion from the C1 District to the GA District, Block 200.01, Lots 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 from the HOO to the GA District, Block 200.01, Lots 2 rear portion, 9, 10, 11, and 12 from the R District to the GA District, Block 199, Lots 9 and 10.01 portion, and 48 from the R District to the GA District, Block 200.10, Lots 1.01, 1.02, 1.03, 2, 3 portion from the R District to the GA District, Block 199, Lots 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.01, 7, 8.01, 43.01, 44.01, 45, 46, 47, 49, 50.01, 51, 52 from the HOO to the GA District, Block 199, Lot 42 from the R District to the GA District portion, and the remainder of the lot remaining in the R District, Block 199, Lot 43 from the HOO District portion, and the R District portion to the GA District portion, the remainder of the lot remaining in the R District, Block 199, Lots 37, 37.01, 38.01, 38.02 portion, 39, 40, 41 portion from the HOO District to the R District, Block 199, Lots 80, 81, 82 from the HOO District to the R District, Block 199, lots 20.01, 141, 142, 143, 144 from the HOO district to the CR district. Block 200.10, lots 8, 9, 10, 10.01, 11.01, 11.02, 11.03, 11.04, 11.05, 11.06, 11.07, 11.08 portion, 12 portion from the R district to the TECD district. Block 200.10, lots 3 portion, 12 portion, 12.01, 12.02, 13, 14 from the R district to the GC district. Block 200.10, lots 22.01, 22.02 from the LI district to the GC district. Block 20.10, lots 4, 15.01, 15.02, 16, 21.01 from the CDZ district to the GC district.
Thank
I
you.
think that was fairly self-explanatory.
Yeah. I think that might have actually made it to 1,000 words, so let's go to the pictures. But before we do that, a little background. In 2005, the township adopted a master plan, a major master plan amendment, which we call the Town Center Plan. And in that, we established a number of, a new concept for the township, the core of the township, and actually that extended outwards to the southern end of the township as well, and to the eastern end of the township. So that master plan created a town center, and then gateway districts surrounding the town center with a step down in development density and some differences in architectural design, being a transition away from a center to more peripheral areas. Along with that, along Route 206, there were the creation of things that had a weird name, highway service zone, making you think of gas stations, but what it really was a sort of a mixed-use zoning that would be appropriate for a state highway. There were some other parts of it as well. A part of it was that the area south of Homestead, roughly Homestead and Hillsborough Road, should be green area, and that was subsequently done with a zoning ordinance a few years ago that made it all agricultural zone. And one of the things that's taken into consideration when you do a master plan is you look at your transportation situation, both current and potential future. At the time in 2005, there was a plan on the table for another 2 tunnels across the Hudson River for commuter trains, and there was queries to townships about where would you like your train station. The train line that would have been reactivated for commuter purposes would have been called the West Trenton train line, and it would have followed that freight train line that you see there that's on towards the edge of this area that's being rezoned, towards the eastern edge of it. That's the train line that passes under Amwell Road, not far from where the bypass also passes under Amwell Road. We were actually, I was mayor at the time, and we were asked about where to put the train station, and our answer was right by Amwell Road, because we were going to have an interchange with the bypass there, which was also on the board at the time. And the logical place to have the train station was by that interchange, which would become a major interchange of the bypass once the reconfiguration was completed. So what was put around the train station was a planning concept that's common for suburban train stations called the transit village, or the transit-oriented village, which is a concept where you have not exactly a second downtown, but you have an area of some commercial, some office, and some apartment development that's adjacent to a train station that basically is for commuters to live there, to make use of that station, and to basically have a neighborhood there that would sort of naturally develop if you had such a facility. So at the time, that concept was approved as part of that master plan amendment. What happened then is that there was, as we mostly know, is that the train tunnels came under dispute because of their cost, and eventually a few years later they were canceled. with the cancellation of the train tunnels, the possibility of adding more commuter train lines went away, and the concept of having a train station at that location went away as well. In the meantime, agreements were reached, the bypass was started, so the bypass began to be built, Amwell Road was reconfigured, and the state completed their acquisition of properties along the new bypass by their eminent domain process. But in any case, when the state was talking about the piece of land where the train station would have gone, which is roughly where the letters GC are printed on two of the maps that you see there, right, that's roughly where the train station would have gone. The state came up with an idea for a bus station, a commuter bus station to go there. But that is still a transit, a mass transit facility. It still could have the zoning that's appropriate to that, but it did require changing the master plan to accommodate that use, which was thought to be less intense than a train station. So in the spring of 2013, 2 years ago, a master plan amendment was adopted by this board. The effort was led by our then township planner, Robert Ringelheim, who had been the planner for the major master plan amendment of 2005. So in 2013, after it was clear that the tunnels were gone and the state was thinking of a commuter bus station there, he came up with a plan to to change the master plan to have zoning that would be more practical to a bus station, and would take this area, which had a obsolete zone called the HOO zone, which you see in orange at the map on your right there, which basically is you live in a house and you run your business out of the house, that customers come there. Now, I say it's obsolete. I joke with Dr. Marulli because that's exactly what he does. But there's very few people who do that anymore. And so the idea was to modernize, quote unquote, the zoning here and make it consistent with the whole town center concept, but to alter it from what it was in 2005 to accommodate the fact that the transit situation changed. So a master plan amendment with a map just like the one in the middle was adopted 2 years ago. Now, the question that sometimes people ask is, why are you doing this zoning ordinance now? Well, the question to ask is, why didn't we do it 2 years ago? And after we did the master plan amendment, and the answer is Mr. Ringelheim died. And we lost the initiative that he had been leading in order to make this adjustment to the master plan and to the zoning. It's finally come around again with the help of our planning consultant, Marcia Schiffman, that Mr. Ringelheim's concepts were dusted off, were refined, and have been brought forward to what was intended to happen 2 years ago, which was to follow up the master plan amendment with the zoning ordinance that would put the concept into effect. And that's where we are right now. One thing I would point out about the area in question, which you can see colored in the middle map, is that the map on your left shows you how much, in pink, of that area the state of New Jersey owns, the Department of Transportation owns. So whatever you might suspect would be the amount of development that could take place in here, realize that you must subtract the land in pink, which is owned by the state and not by private interests. So it's, again, not as much as you might think. But in any case, for the details of this, of what the ordinance does, which is two things: it establishes a Gateway C zone, which did not previously exist as a type of zone in Hillsborough, and then it transfers properties, various properties from whatever their current zone is to one of those zones: R for residential, GA for Gateway A, which is a zone that's already established along Route 206 on either side of Town Center. So now it would be established on Anwell Road to the east of Town Center. And the TECD zone for a piece of it, which already is established along Homestead Road. And so another piece would be added to it here. Ms. Schiffman, I would ask you to take it from here for more details and to take us through the actual draft ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what I'd like to do, and that was a wonderful, very encompassing introduction, I'd like to go right through and talk about the ordinance and how the ordinance, and the ordinance at the, so if you have a copy, I think I'll go through it and highlight some of the items in the ordinance. As Mr. Bernstein read all of the properties that are being changed, we won't go through that again. On page 2, it basically establishes in section 2 the GC zone district standards. And I think it's important, the purpose, because it talks about a mix, residential, limited retail, other office commercial uses to support the transit facility. B is the principal permitted uses, and a key one is mixed-use buildings that permit retail on the first floor only with residential or office above. And later on in the ordinance, it allows up to 3 stories buildings, but it restricts the footprint of the mixed-use buildings to not more than 20,000 square feet. So the intent is to keep the size of the buildings and the type of retail limited. It also, and this was critical, it requires that those buildings will only be constructed after the transit center is in operation or in existence. So there's a certain phasing for the mixed-use buildings. The other thing with mixed-use buildings, and I'll just show you in the ordinance, you see this on the map, do you see this blue area on the west side of the rail line? Those are about 14 acres. That's now within the proposed GC zone. The remainder of the GC zone, or most of it to the south of Amwell Road in here, and to the west of the rail line, is owned by the state. So you're really talking about 14 plus acres, which is, I think, 4 or 5 properties that are within the GC zone near the train station that could be developed for mixed-use development. And those are specifically called out in the ordinance, the lot and blocks of those 14 plus acres. So moving on page 3 are the residential use standards. I mean, it allows for quite a variety of uses, but which you can, you know, like personal service attached establishments, offices, childcare, the bus station or mass transit facility with retail, utilities, restaurants, banks, but not with drive-ins, drive-throughs, conference centers, commercial instructional facilities, hotel, motel. Okay, so that's a wide variety of uses are permitted in this zone. Number 14 is residential uses, and it has very strict standards for what would be permitted. And it's broken up by, and well, I think the first thing is that residential uses would only be permitted in a mixed-use development, which means you have to have a certain size, which in the ordinance it specifies 10 acres, which is almost the entire GC zone in that section under private ownership. It has the limitation of when it can be constructed, which is with the transit facility. And then it allows some different kinds of residential uses, flats or lofts in a mixed-use building, and it permits 1 for every 1,000 square feet of retail in the building. And then it allows freestanding residential uses, again, part of a mixed-use plan development that have standards for townhouses, of 8 units per acre and multifamily units not to exceed 10 per acre. You may say, well, where do those numbers come from? We used the recommendations of the Sustainable New Jersey Transit-Oriented Development Handbook. And with these standards, the town will in fact get credit for their transit-oriented development in terms of Sustainable New Jersey, which the town is a participant in, which is good. So you have the standards of density per acre on this 14-acre parcel, but also there's another limitation that we've written in, which is to limit the number of total dwelling units that are in freestanding buildings, and that would be a maximum of 100. And this was consistent with the recommendations in the master plan in terms of limited freestanding residential units. So you can have residential in the mixed-use retail apartment buildings and freestanding buildings as well. And there's another recommendation, another limitation, because, and if you go to page 4, item 5, one of our concerns was to forward the idea of having mixed use, some retail and mixed use buildings around the transit center, which would be very appropriate, and we didn't want to encourage just freestanding residential buildings in this zone, on these lots. So there's a limitation of freestanding residential units shall not exceed 70% of the total units that could be planned within that development. So those are all limitations that would be part of a planned mixed-use development. And there are some in E, there are limitations in terms of bedroom mix too, to encourage smaller units, not 3-bedroom or greater housing in this area. So, I mean, that's really, I think, a critical component of the GC zone. And then it allows other uses, extended care, health clubs, farm uses are included. And I would just point out number 19, existing single-family detached dwellings could be retained in compliance with section 18866. And that would permit them to be there, to expand the building itself, but not to build new single-family detached buildings. So it grandfathers them in.
Right, I think that's important to mention, that those who have single-family homes in the GC district, those homes remain conforming, therefore you don't need to go to the Board of Adjustment to do anything with your home. All that this does is it stops anyone from developing in this district a new tract of single-family homes. But those that are already there remain permitted.
Right,
And therefore, you don't have to go through variances to do whatever you have to do with a single-family home. Okay.
Thank you. There, on page 5, accessory uses are discussed. I'm not going to go into that. Page 6, conditional uses. The only one specified is a parking deck. And that may be something that may happen when and if the transit center becomes built. So it is permitted. It's limited in terms of height, and no higher than the associated principal building, and being compatible with the surrounding buildings and screened and fully screened from the right-of-way. Page 6F has the area, yard, and bulk requirements. The minimum is 2 acres. However, that does not apply for mixed development, which is 10 acres. And there are other front yard and setback requirements, and they're generally consistent with the requirements in the, I think, your town center area, looking at if you're building buildings to have them close to the street, be more of a urban walkable center rather than a suburban center setback. In terms of page 7, just to highlight some other items, there are setbacks. There are also minimum and maximum heights. The minimum height is 2 stories because that's to encourage a more significant building rather than a 1-story building. And then the tract size for planned development of 10 acres, which is consistent with the municipal land use law for planned development. Maximum building height, 3 stories. At the bottom of page 7, I think what's important to note is the individual building footprint, because you want to avoid having big box buildings come in, and it's limiting it to 20,000 square feet. So based on that, the maximum in a non-residential or mixed-use building could be 50,000 square feet, which is pretty substantial, but it's not like an over-the-top super
Not a big box.
store. Yeah. Yes. And it limits the length of the building as well to 200 feet. Moving on, page 8 discusses parking requirements, pretty consistent with other zones. Page 9, bank parking or reserve future parking, that's included as well. Page 10, item H. This includes supplemental regulations for affordable housing, which would be consistent with state and township regulations. A minimum of 20% of any dwelling units would be affordable and distributed in accordance with the applicable regulations. Item I on page 10 talks about development standards. In the middle of the page, 1A is important. Those are the 14 lots here. Well, it's really here in the GC zone, not 14 lots, 14 acres that are adjacent to the mass transit facility, and they're specifically spelled out in the ordinance.
And they're the only lots that could have the development of freestanding residential units,
Right.
would be in those lots next to what would be the bus facility.
And then going on where it says general procedures, that's primarily looking at how you submit an application. You could come for concept plan review to the planning board. If it's a planned use development, what needs to be done in terms of phasing and design regulations. Page 11 of 25, the bottom of page, item 3, specifies that the requirements of your architectural and site design overlay zone will apply except as otherwise provided for in these district requirements. And what we've also done, and it's at the back of the ordinance in one of the sections, section is changes to the architectural site design standard table. And we recommend a change to that map, to their map as well. So that is still consistent with the regulations that you have in place for the town center, for the GA zone, the GB zone, Gateway B zone, Gateway A zone, and the highway services zone. So it's consistent with that. There is, however, a lot of, quite a few pages of design standards specifically listed for this zone. And that's on page 12, page 13, page 14, Page 15, for example, on page 15, it talks about the street design standards for Amwell Road, for service roads, for alleys, which may be part of your mixed-use development. So, and that's important to have part of this ordinance. Standards for landscaping on page 16, parking design, loading, going on to page 18 and 19, signage. Many of these standards are similar to those in other zones, but they're just repeated here. Page 21, streetscape elements have lighting enumerated. 22, 23, again, other kinds of accessory uses and design elements that would be part of the design of this center. And to really create a high-quality mixed-use development within the future transit center. And going to page, almost done, page 24. Section 3, it amended the schedule for non-residential zones, so I've attached that to your packet, where we've added at the bottom of that schedule the GC zone, and the requirements also list in a footnote impervious coverage, front yard setback, and building height requirements. Section 4 amends Section 188, Attachment 11, Township of Hillsborough Plan Mixed Use Development Table 2, and we added a footnote there. That would be the standards for the freestanding mixed-use development, freestanding residential development in the GC zone. And what I didn't mention is for those freestanding buildings, what's recommended is solely townhouses and multifamily buildings, not single-family detached lots, not duplexes, not triplexes, to get sort of a more dense development in this very limited area. So that table, and that would be based on your current multifamily mixed-use development table standards, with the exceptions listed below, which sort of allows for a maximum height of 3 stories and talks about setbacks for multifamily buildings and a minimum of 10 feet. Page 25, Section 5, amends Section 188, Attachment 6, which is the Township of Hillsborough ASD overlay zone, which I had mentioned, which added now the GC zone to the overlay zone, and it removes what was originally called the transit village zone. So we will do that. And then it has Section 6, amend Section 188, 170B regarding the overlay zone map. And that we're recommending, the map has not been prepared yet, hopefully by next week. Or so we'll have that done. But it would take out the area that's shown as Transit Village.
And replace.
And I think what we'll do is use the zoning map to show the GA area, the TE, and the GC area. I don't think the TECD is in your architectural overlay
No,
zones.
it's more of a, kind of a, it's similar more to the LI, Light Industrial District.
Right.
It's very similar to that with, I think, very slight changes.
So that'll be amended, and that
Yeah.
map will be amended. And that's it.
Yeah, and thank you, Marcia. The last few sections are that kind of detail work you have to do in creating a new zone to cross-correlate it with all your other ordinances, tables, maps, where if you don't do that kind of detailed work, you end up with major messes, and that other people point out in the future to your dismay. So a lot of what Marcia's had to do in the last few weeks is do all that detailed work to make sure that this ordinance cross-correlates with everything else, and that the Gateway C is fit into everything else in the transit village removed from everything else. So that's that last part. The many pages of standards, that was Bob Ringelheim's stuff and his style. He believed in the belt and suspenders approach, hold your pants up two ways rather than one. Two was better than one in case something breaks. So although there were a lot of standards in the architectural and site design ordinance, he wanted to make sure that standards were in this ordinance as well. So, so there's just a passage to refer to anything that was missed here, go to that ordinance to find. But that's what the bulk of this is in terms of the writing, is Bob putting all of those design standards for quality development specifically into this ordinance so that there was no one could say that it isn't in there. But again, the main features are that residential development is limited to the lofts above retail, or to apartments, small apartment buildings, and townhouses that are only going to be in a 14-acre area just south of where the bus station would be along the railroad there. And the rest of the zone, not that there's much of it that isn't owned by the state other than Mr. Clerico's property, but in fact, north of Amwell Road, you see a piece of the GC zone. Well, that's because that's that sports club, the racquetball club, which is a permitted use in the GC zone. So now actually that sits in the zone now as a permitted use. Again, the rest of it, Gateway A and TECD, are not mentioned in this ordinance because they're already established zones. So just whatever happens there goes to what's already established. This ordinance just simply changes the map to put properties in those zones that were previously in different zones. And that's it. And another important thing, again, is that for the establishment of the GC zone, if you have a single-family home in that zone already, it doesn't become a non-standard use, a non-conforming use. It's still conforming, so you don't have the trouble of dealing with variances. So, from the board members, certainly comments, questions. Again, my thanks to Ms. Schiffman for real detail-oriented work, going back and forth to try to get this thing clean and consistent, internally consistent, and in reasonable shape. The way that it's calculated out for that 14 acres, the max you could see there would be like 40 lofts and 100 freestanding, because that's probably as much as could fit on 14 acres. So the zone requirement is written with that piece of property in mind as being the only place that this could possibly happen for these planned mixed-use developments with the freestanding stuff. So it's been thought out with the actual properties in mind and calculated with that in mind. So it didn't come from nowhere. It came from thinking about the actual map and what it would entail. Questions, comments? Mike? Doug?
I compared it to the original 2005 master plan and then the 2013 modifications and to Gateway A, and I think it's very comprehensive. It's very good. I think we're ready for it.
Thank you. And with Mike's 37 years of experience, I value that very highly. That's great. Rob, anything? Good? Bob?
No, I think it's very thorough and looking into it, so.
Dr. Dan, we're removing parts of your zone, but not your office.
That's okay. Thank you.
His office on the other side of 206.
Yeah, I just had a question. The access, the street access, just to clarify, certain would not be from the bypass. It would be from the spur whatever that is,
Yes.
right? Just for public information?
Yes, and I don't think that any of it becomes practical until the bus station lot is developed.
Yeah.
I think at that point, the rest of the Gateway C becomes practical. As far as the others, Gateway A is bounded by Hamilton and has Amwell running through the middle of it, and Steinmetz on the southern end of it, so it's got access already. And the TECD is also along Steinmetz, so that would be the road that would access it. And the residential properties are, they're bowling alley lots, so they border on the long, skinny lots that border on either Hamilton or Amwell Road. So the access to the that particular lot that's south of the bus station will happen when the arrangement for the bus station is done to make that accessible. That will also make that other part accessible. The problem with gaining access from Raider Boulevard there by the movie theater and the Powerhouse Gym and that area is wetlands, intervening wetlands, plus state ownership of property where the bypass would be going through. So you really, it wouldn't be terribly practical right there. Marcia's pointing to it. There's a little, see that little strip of land that's in the GC there? That's wet. And it's not really practicable to either develop it or to punch a road through it without making the DEP very angry about wetlands destruction. So I don't know, whether that would ever become an access. But Steinmetz will be the access to the south of Amwell Road.
Mm-hmm.
And TECD is not terribly intense. That's more like like warehousing and whatnot. It's not a huge traffic intense kind of development in that. So, the most intense development in this is Gateway A, which is similar to what's along 206, and that's got access to Amwell Road and Hamilton Road. And the big bypass interchange on Amwell Road. Miniman?
Just bring this in conformity with, what was envisioned master plan-wise is taking us a bit of time now due to some circumstances that certainly none of us anticipated, and certainly saddened by what's transpired. But when you look at sort of where we are today on the there on the right, and you see sort of the vision of how the development will flow, it's a much cleaner. And the GC does allow, it creates a nice balance you see in here of flexibility of what can be done there, but also balances out limitations in the way that we think that should get built out. So it kind of provides a nice balance on both ends of that, where it doesn't allow for anything to be built. And certainly the things that can be built have some limitations to ensure that it's consistent with both some of the surrounding zones, but also the general approach that you want to take along that, that transit area, if that ever does develop from the bus station perspective. So it's time we move forward with and bring us in conformity to what's been envisioned for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we always had this in mind, Bob and I, and it would have been done in 2013 if he had lived. But it took till now. I mean, you have a situation here with a state highway, county highway, and a railroad running through this area, and you have to make your master plan and your zoning accordingly, and next to town center. It used to be called smart growth by the state. That was a term of art for them in the mid to latter part of the last decade, and the concept of being that the growth is denser at the center and much less in the periphery, and this is pretty close to the center, and that also your growth, et cetera, is where your major arteries of transportation are, and here they are. So, Deputy Mayor?
Along with yourself and Mr. Merdinger, I was on both master plan committees. Been on this board for 12 years, continuously. I'm just very happy to finally see this area straightened out, in my opinion. So, been a long time coming.
Yeah. Another thing I would ask Mr. Bernstein to confirm for anyone who has a question about this is that if you already have a piece of property that's approved with, variances or whatever conditions of approval, changing the zoning doesn't eliminate your prior approvals and permissions, does it?
No, it does not.
So, if you previously had the permission to do something somewhere in here, based on your current zoning, the fact that your zoning changes doesn't eliminate the prior approvals that you have received. That the resolution granting you the approvals for whatever variances you got remain in force.
So long as you meet the time frames established by the approvals and/or the appropriate statutes and ordinances.
Thank you. Okay. So, yes.
Can I just?
Yes, of course.
A couple.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'd like to do is attach a map, which
Uh-huh.
would be change the ASD map
Uh-huh.
to the ordinance when it goes, so the township committee
Right.
will have it. So that would be something in addition to what you've seen here now. Also, if you turn to page 3 of 25, I just caught something that
Yes.
I'd like to recommend we change.
Mhm.
It's 14, item 14.
Yeah.
A. That should be, it says shall comply with track standards under section 188-113.6. It says H1,
Yeah.
but it should be I1 because I changed. The ordinance was in flux for a while.
Okay.
And I added things and I
Okay.
didn't catch that change.
Thanks for catching that.
Okay, so that's one. There
We most certainly would not have.
There probably will be more, but.
HI, whatever, okay. Thank you for
Okay,
catching
you're
that.
welcome.
That's the level of detail, and it's one of the things that I appreciate so much that Ms. Schiffman has brought to us, is and what this requires to actually enact is that attention to detail and getting it right the first time. So at this time, I could just ask for comment from the public. We don't have to open it. It's not a hearing for an approval. So anybody in the public want to speak on this, you're here, and you can do that right now. Yes, sir. Now, also remember, speaking to the microphone. If you have trouble walking, we can bring one to you.
There's the other.
Yeah, there's a mobile mic. Let Mr. Okay. No, I don't, I mean, gosh. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
My name is David Liedel. I have some property affected by this.
Mr. Lidle, can you spell your last name and give us your address for the record, please?
Okay. My last name is spelled L-I-E, D as in David, L. My current home address is 5130 Vermont Drive, Easton, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
My company that owns this property has a business address. Is that
Right,
Bill?
yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm
Okay.
curious, which of the planned zones is your property
Can I
in?
walk up there and
Yeah, okay, sure.
okay, right here,
Uh-huh,
Kaz.
uh-huh.
this is
Kaz,
lot
can you give him the
14.
mic?
Yeah.
Okay, lot 14.
Uh-huh.
This
Mr. Lidle,
here,
Mr.
Mr.
Lidle,
Lidle.
I don't wish to interrupt you, but.
Oh, yeah, the
The man who
microphone.
was about to give you the mic
Forgot
is
the-
really
forgot the
only-
microphone.
and
I
the
know.
I
stenographer.
stand corrected.
No, Mr. Lidle, we can hear you, but at home they couldn't hear anything if they're watching the video. Go ahead.
Okay, this is lot 14.
Ah, yeah,
This is lot 22.
okay,
This is lot 22.01.
right,
Okay, this lot
yes,
on the draft
yeah.
was not included.
Uh,
I think it's a type of
Oh.
graphical error, but, because this is lot 22. 22.01 is included on this. It's at
Okay.
the base of the draft.
okay.
I only caught it because I own it.
So we have 2201 and 2202.
And 14.
Yes. And
But
all
22
the,
But 22 is not listed here.
On the draft ordinance, and I don't know which copy, it says block 210,
Yes.
lot 2201.
Yes.
2202.
Yes,
From the LI district to
Right.
the GC district.
correct,
That's,
but not 22.
so you're saying there's a lot 22 that doesn't have a .0 something afterwards,
That's-
after it?
That's correct.
oh, really?
I have my recent tax payments, if that helps.
Okay, well, thank you for coming, and this is why we do this hearing first, because we don't want, yeah,
No, I
thank you,
thought
no,
it'd be a
thank you,
good
that's
idea,
good.
too.
Oh, we'll look
Yes.
into that.
I'm
I
not
mean,
upset.
No, okay, I mean, we'll make sure that we got that right there, down in that corner, so we'll check that. We'll
Very
check
good.
that, that's not a problem,
Okay.
so we'll have a look at it, is that
Yes,
it? No,
that's-
no problem, no problem. This-
One other thing, is
Yes.
it possible to get a copy of this ordinance?
The reason why the ordinance has not become public until, at least tonight, was until the draft had become something more than a draft.
Uh-huh.
It would not become a public document. If the board were to recommend this evening the document with the minor changes proposed, it would then at that point become a public record, and if you would like a copy, I'm sure contacting the planning office, they would be, in fact, I'm sure Ms. Shipman will pass along to the planning office that they will get you a copy.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, we'll look
That's
into lot
wonderful.
22, and then
Yes.
we'll change H to I,
Yes.
and it'll then become the thing to be introduced at a township committee meeting, and at that, it emerges to the public. Okay?
Very good.
Okay?
Okay,
Thank you.
for your time.
Thank you. Right there on that, that's fine, thank you. Next, anybody else? Mr. Clerico, yeah? Okay, come on up.
Good evening, Ed Clerico. I live at 9 Goulet Court, and we own 2 Clerico Lane and 60 Clerico Lane. There was a meeting at one point in time where the idea, this is back in the Transit Village discussions, that both pieces would be included. And it looks like, I haven't looked at these maps carefully,
Okay.
but it looks like the one isn't. And it would kind of leave it stranded because...
Can you go point?
Sure. It's
Grab the mobile mic and then point to what we're thinking of here. Yeah.
Again, you'd have to
No,
study
it's okay.
the map carefully. but
Maybe
it
the
looks
map
like-
on the right would help you, the one
Well,
with the current, that might be...
No, it's the
Okay.
same here. This is the lane, and it would continue down, and you see where the brook follows this way.
Yeah,
60 Clerical Lane is on both sides of the brook,
yeah.
and you would landlock this piece somewhat into its own zone. You wouldn't develop this naturally any differently than you would develop this, because it would be very difficult to cross the brook.
Okay, so that's already TECD, yes?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it would just seem that this would go with this more likely.
Hmm.
At least this piece on that side of the brook. And it's worth a more detailed consideration because there'd be no way to, I don't think you'd want, you said TECD is warehouse?
Transitional
Economic.
it's similar to a light industrial.
Light industrial.
It's similar.
I mean, it's worth
Similar.
considering if you want light industrial on a separate island there where the only access would be through the,
Right, street, it's coincidentally named after you. Hang on a minute.
What's on the other side?
Yeah, I want to see something.
so this is the brook.
Uh-huh,
And this is the farm that's on both sides of the brook.
right. Which is
So the lane comes down here.
So which is the piece you're referring to, this whole thing?
Well, it's worth discussing whether you do the whole thing or at least do this section on this side of the brook that's adjacent to the new GC zone. So that as you access this, you're in one zone.
Yeah.
This would be, if it would be ever developed, would be accessed off of Homestead Road.
Which is why the thought, because Homestead Road is now TECD.
Right.
Yeah.
Just not likely. You have to build a major bridge here to cross the floodplain and brook. It's not likely it would be. Same reasoning you gave, you wouldn't access from Raider Boulevard.
Yeah.
It's the same obstacle there. You have a big floodplain and brook to cross. So.
Now, if I may, Ms. Schiffman, there's a light blue tracing here, which looks like it's almost a road right-of-way, but it might not be. It might be, if you could just tell me what this light blue tracing is?
Isn't that the brook?
I think it's the sewer easement.
Oh, the sewer easement, and is the sewer easement running along the brook? He would know. Right here, see this? Is that the sewer easement? It looks like
And
a
it
sewer
goes
line.
along the brook?
So the sewer easement would be roughly running along where this boundary would be, this wetland that you wouldn't cross, more or less, it would be down the bottom. It'd be right down the bottom, right. So north, what you're saying is north of the sewer easement there, that from here on up would more likely be should more likely be naturally in GC. Yeah, and here it is actually as a wetland drawing. See, now here, there's the wetland drawing, that north of the brook would be here, and south of the brook would stay in TECD. So that's what you're...
That's my point.
Mr. Chairman, just for the purpose of the record, is my understanding that the master plan amendment does not call for that portion of that property to be included in a different zone than the one it is currently in. And therefore, if it were to be added to this ordinance, would require that the governing body adopt it with a different makeup of voting because it would not be in conformance with the master plan.
So you're saying maybe we'd have to do that as a different ordinance?
Yes.
Which it could be done. I mean, it's not...
It would require the master plan to be re-reviewed, or it could do it in a separate ordinance.
Now, mind you, there are zones that, I mean, for instance, the previous master plan amendment that that was for Western Hillsborough, right, called for 20-acre zoning in the agricultural zone. What was eventually adopted in December of 2002 was 10-acre zoning.
Correct.
The master plan was never changed.
It is still...
So
the difference between lot size and zone change is what we're looking at here.
Okay. All right, so the one thing that should is the zone designation. Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think, Mr. Clerico raises an interesting
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if it had been discussed in 2013 when Mr. Ringelheim presented the master
It might have
plan.
been. It might have been. I'm trying to remember too, Mr. Clerico, whether Bob had this in mind, and maybe he did, and he didn't. I hate to say it, but live to work it in there, and then we lost the thread of it.
The other thing, I think we
Yeah.
need to look at a bigger area, and not just, to do that kind of zone change, not take it, just focusing on that one small piece, but look at it, how does it affect the rest of the zoning below this area? Because this map is limited, and I don't have the overall
Yeah.
zoning
We
map
just
to
did the
look at, but it's
TECD,
something
though.
we could look at. Maybe it's
Yeah.
the next time you do a zone change.
Well,
or
yeah, I mean,
master plan
I don't think anybody's opposed to it, and I just don't want to. I don't want to mess this ordinance up in any way. So if Mr. Bernstein's saying that there's an impediment, then we won't go there. But I think it's a good point, and makes sense to draw a boundary along an unbridgeable wetland. So I don't think anybody has a problem with that. Nobody's opposed to it, but. I guess we'd have to go through some more legal measures and gymnastics and whatnot and adopt it as a separate ordinance. But I don't think anybody's opposed to doing that, Mr. Clerico. So thanks for bringing that up. And you're right, Bob may have had that in mind. I wish I could remember, but
It was mentioned at a meeting, but I wasn't sure if it was the master plan.
I don't know.
Meeting. I remember Ed talking about it,
Yeah.
landlocking there.
And Bob knew, but
Yeah, but there's the
yeah,
devil's in the details.
it is.
You know,
it is.
It was mentioned and it was a good idea to do it, but
If the board is so inclined to have the planner take a look at that TECD zone
Well, just
and
that
make,
piece of
and
it.
make, well, and make recommendations regarding it, then maybe it makes, at that point, we're looking at a second ordinance.
Okay, that's fine.
This one
Because,
could go forward.
because otherwise we have to come back.
No, we don't wanna do
certain
that, but
amendments
we'll do-
before we can put this one forward.
Well, we could do that as part of the final action we take today in terms of recommending this ordinance to Township Committee. We can recommend that the planner go ahead and prepare, study that and prepare that for a next action. Not a problem.
The one thing you say, I mean, it looks like it's a very big lot, right? Lots.
Is there a lot line?
And the sewer easement or Royce Brook is
Yeah.
not a lot line, so you're suggesting you may
Divide the-
you may have the lot in two different zone districts.
Correct, follow the stream.
Yeah.
That's just what I'm suggesting.
Well, that's why I think it has to
It's a
be.
38-acre lot.
Yeah, you can have a lot with split zoning, but you don't tend to do that. But, I mean, it's not impossible. It can happen. So I don't know. That's why it's got to be looked into, I think.
Mr. Clerical, do you happen to own that?
Excuse me?
You happen to own that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. But it's still sensible.
It would make sense.
Yeah, I mean. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clarko. Anybody else? Okay. So, two different things now. One is to,
Two different resolutions.
right.
The
So-
first resolution, Mr. Chairman, would be to recommend to the committee
Mhm.
the draft ordinance with the minor corrections the planner has suggested and be forwarded to the committee for their consideration for introduction.
So moved.
Second?
Okay.
Does that include the lot 22?
Yeah, well, that's got to be looked
The
into
minor
as a
am-
correction.
To
Yeah.
confirm the minor amendment, but
Minor.
if that is a minor amendment to add
Yeah,
Mr.
that's-
Lytle's lot, we
Got it.
will.
It's not even really an amendment
But
because,
it's
Just a
part of,
correction.
it's part of
Yeah.
the minor corrections.
yes. Okay. Roll call, please, Lucille.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Dr. Maruli?
Yes.
Mr. Merdinger?
Yes.
Mr. Peason?
Yes.
Committeeman Delcor?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Burchett?
Yes.
Chairman Dr. Cerisi?
Yes.
The second resolution, Mr. Chairman, is to ask the planner to review the lot just to the south of the proposed GC district, which is currently in the TECD district owned by Mr. Clerico. See whether or not there may be some recommendations regarding the zoning on that property and related properties.
Related to the
That-
existence
to
of,
that zone portion there.
right, that right there, related to the existence of wetlands, impassable wetlands.
I'll move that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Mr. Clerico, is the eastern border of that you can sit, that's fine.
No,
TECD, is that your property border also?
Yeah, the eastern, next to the RA, that's your property border as well as the zone border?
I would think so. It's very close. It must be intended to be, yes.
Yeah, well, again, that's one of the things we can look into, and you can obviously talk to the planning office, or they may have questions for you, okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll have to, that's one of the things to look into, make sure that that's
Your
clear.
card.
Okay?
Your card or your phone.
Yeah. One other question, Mr. Clerico, that on the western border, that strip, does anyone know what?
Yeah, there's a little
Lot that-
thin
that
strip of
blue-
blue
that
along the
blue-
railroad.
The blue strip next to the state,
There's a,
Property.
which map are you looking at?
The one on
to
the
the
far
left.
left.
See that little strip? That, if it's on the other side of, I don't know which side of the railroad it's on. Let me look on the map here. I have the map here.
yeah, it is, it's on, yeah, it's on. the-
That's the railroad.
It's the actual railroad?
Yeah, they just colored it.
Oh, okay, it's the actual railroad, so it doesn't, it's irrelevant, belongs to the railroad.
Got a little cross-hatching there.
I can't see that.
No, I know, I can't either, and it's not depicted that way on our map here. Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry, is there another? Need the microphone?
No, Mr. Lytle?
Mr. Lytle, please, please
Sit
don't.
down. I don't know where I am.
You're hurt.
Anything to the west of the railroad, that's my property.
That's you, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you.
You can leave the mic, I'll collect it later. We need a second, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
but I think that what happened is the little strip got colored blue is actually railroad property.
We need a second.
Huh? Yes, we need a second to
Second.
the,
Second.
second. Roll call, please, Lucille?
Yes. Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Dr. Maruli?
Yes.
Mr. Merdinger?
Yes.
Mr. Peason?
Yes.
Committeeman Delcor?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Burchett?
Yes.
Chairman Dr. Cerisi?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor. And again, thank you, Ms. Schiffman, very much for bringing this to this point. And you have a document, Together North Jersey Regional Planning Initiative, and you have your New Jersey Planner, which I suggest you read because it's on affordable housing. Our next meeting,
Mr.
Will-
Chair,
yes,
there's
I'm
a
sorry.
request to cancel the meeting on the 7th since there is no activity presently scheduled.
okay?
So there is a meeting before for some people who will still have to attend.
Oh, right. Okay, so so motion to cancel the May 7th meeting, being there no business on it.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Canceled.
The
What's our next meeting then?
May 14th.
May 14th will be our next meeting. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.